Welcome everyone to the UTR All Access Series powered by Oracle. Prakash Amritraj here, again with you. We've had some pretty spectacular guests so far in this webinar series. We've had Sam Querrey, Allison Risk, that was a special one, certainly, for me to be able to have a chat with her. Nick Bollettieri dropped some incredible knowledge. Tennis Sangren shared a bit about his journey. And of course, Dr. Jim Lohr and Gordon Euling were exceptional. And in case you missed any of those webinars, you can always catch them on demand at myutr.com. See everyone piling in, get comfortable. We have a very interesting guest today. I'm really looking forward to speaking to him. Diana, hi. Oh, you're all the way in London. I hope everything's okay in Europe. I know we're all experiencing challenges all over the world. One thing I've really liked is everyone's been so global that's joined us. Jaya from the UK as well, hi. We have a New Zealander in the house. Very nice. Tammy from Texas. Everyone's piling in. Very nice. For those of you who may not be familiar with me, my name is Prakash Amritraj. I grew up playing in Los Angeles, my tennis. I played tennis for USC, won a national championship for them my freshman year, played on the tour for quite some time. Now I do a lot of work for the Tennis Channel, on Tennis Channel Live all week this week, 9 a.m. Pacific time to noon. If you want to catch it, we're going over the last 5 US Opens, which have been pretty spectacular. We'll be continuing with 2017 tomorrow. Andy Roddick will be joining us as well. Now, as everyone's piling in, before we tee up our very special guest today, let's just take a short look at a video on how UTR powered by Oracle is really changing the game of tennis.
There is a movement building in tennis, a groundswell that is changing the game, redefining who we play, how we play, and bringing fun to the sport in a whole new way. It isn't about who you are, where you come from, or your age or gender. It's about passion and love of the sport, about the will to improve, about community, competition, fun, and friendship. In local communities all around the world, this movement is creating new opportunities that make tennis, well, universal, equal, open, inviting. This is Universal Tennis. Want to join us?
Truly fantastic how UTR is bringing us all together through the sport of tennis. Now, a big official welcome to the UTR powered by Oracle All Access Series, a free opportunity to connect and learn from some of the biggest names in tennis. Just a reminder to all the coaches out there, I want you all to stay tuned because UTR has a new virtual events initiative coming soon for any coach anywhere to be able to create and host your own virtual events. They can be free or paid with all the proceeds going towards the coaches. So go to myutr.com, you can sign up for free and UTR will get you set up ASAP. And just a quick reminder before we get started, our All Access Series continues tomorrow with Vasek Pospisil. He'll be coming on at 2 p.m. Pacific. I've known Vasek for a long time, really, really sweet, genuine guy, and he's got a lot of great stuff to be able to share. Now, without further ado, I'd love to bring on our guest today. Very, very interesting. He's a very young man, but has a tremendous history behind him as an athlete himself and his wife. And on top of that, they birthed arguably the greatest young talent in all of sports who has been making quite an impact on today's game, Coco Gauff. So can I please introduce our guest, who I'm very excited to speak to, Mr. Corey Gauff.
Hi there, Prakash. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Corey. How are you? How are you at this wild time in the world?
We're maintaining pretty good. In your introduction, you said young man. I hadn't been called young in a while, at least.
Well, this is actually I've of course seen you on TV. I guess we've missed each other at a lot of events, but you know, talking to you, which we had an opportunity right before this, I'm like, oh man, this guy. So I don't know when he had Coco. He's so young, this guy.
Yeah, we're doing good. We're doing as good as you can. Held up in isolating ourselves as much as we can and trying to keep on the training. We went from one person being homeschooled to instantly 2 more people being homeschooled. My other sons are homeschooled. So we've got a pretty scheduled life now because we got to make sure somebody's out of the house while one's studying and one's upstairs and the other's downstairs, so we can get the right amount of work done without the distractions.
Are you guys? I assume you are. I just figured that's the kind of household that you and your wife run. But is it pretty productive time even during this lockdown?
Yeah, we found that especially the boys, they get a lot of work done in a lot less time than a full school day. So that's been kind of nice to see. They eat a lot, so I mean,
They're growing boys. How old are
yeah,
they?
yes, they eat a lot. So that was kind of the aha moment. I'm like, how do they maintain in school? Because they can't possibly get this much food in school.
And they're Cody and Cameron, yes?
Yes, yes.
How old are they?
Cody's 12, Cameron's 6. Cody's more baseball, basketball. He just stopped playing football. But in Cameron, I think he wants to play tennis so bad. And we're like, no, we don't want to do this again.
Well, I listen. I definitely want to get into the kids because it seems like you may not have one phenom on your hand. You may have, a couple star athletes, 2 or 3 in the family. But before, I'd love to talk about your journey. First, Corey, where are you from?
I'm from Delray Beach, Florida. I was actually born in New Orleans, so I got quite a bit of family in New Orleans, and I was born there. And I went back and forth every summer while I was growing up because my parents were divorced, so I would go see my dad's side of the family in New Orleans. So that was a lot of fun to go there in the summertime because most of my uncles were all tradesmen, so I get to go on the jobs and do construction, electricity, and bricklaying, all kinds of things I got to do there that I didn't get to do in Delray Beach, which was much more city.
Now you obviously learned hard work from a young age. When did you get into sport? Because sports obviously become such a big part of your life.
When you come from a family full of people that have trades and always need help, it's smart to play sports so you can get away from having to do work all the time. So you can get on some team and have a reason to be away from doing work around the house all the time. But I started just like anybody else, playing whatever was in season. So I played all sports, basketball, football, baseball, soccer, tennis. So I grew up, a block away from the recreation and community center. So we had all the things you needed to play all sports. We had baseball fields there, basketball, tennis courts, swimming pools, and we still sometimes go there and train today. So, I played all the sports in all the leagues, Little League Baseball, Pop Warner football. So I got a chance to get exposed to everything, and I started to choose when I got to high school.
Now, Candy is a pretty exceptional athlete as well. She has a pretty storied background in that field.
Yeah, she's certainly the accomplished athlete in the family so far. I mean, Coco's coming along, but she was started out being a gymnast, and then I think she won the state title. She's the best gymnast around 12, 13. Her dad had a meeting with her coach. I can't do anything else for you. You'd have to go to Texas and go train to go further to try to get to the Olympics. And he, being the Southern gentleman, wasn't going to let his daughter go move with a family in Texas. So that was actually her last meeting. And a few weeks later, she switched and tried out basketball and then tried out track. And she became an instant success in track because of all the gymnast training that she had. She hurdles and heptathlons were her events. So she was actually a 2-time junior Olympian. I think she medaled in both junior Olympics, and then was heavily recruited, but ended up running track at Florida State.
Wow. Now, but you're nothing to, balk at either. I mean, you played at the collegiate level, basketball, and at a very good school in Georgia State. Talk about that journey.
Yeah, I think, when I was in high school, I was mostly football, like most kids in Florida. I mean, I was heavy football, baseball, and then, after you get hit quite a bit, you start thinking about other things to do. But I really knew I had to, work to get a scholarship, because if I didn't, I was going to stay home and go to junior college and work and pay my way through school. So about my junior year of high school, I focused just on basketball and put in a lot of work because I was a little bit behind because I was playing football mostly, and worked really hard and ended up getting recruited quite a bit in my senior year, and then settled on Georgia State because of the degree I wanted. It was in Atlanta. I loved Atlanta, so it was kind of a geographical choice for me. But ended up going there and playing 4 years, and graduated from there, and it was a great experience. I love my college experience. I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Is that when you and Candy met? Is that something you guys certainly vibed on, the athletics?
I used to like her when I was playing Pop Warner football. She was a cheerleader.
Okay.
So her dad was the coach, and man, he's nice, very nice, but back then he was very mean. He was a typical football coach. He didn't,
Okay, yeah.
So, no one would dare try to talk to his daughter and then be on his football team too. So that's how small the world is. So never tried to date anything until I was like 26, 27 years old. I ran into it when I came home for the holidays, and we started talking and dating, and then got married. But no, I mean, she was, the very, you ever grow up with somebody that they're very attractive, but there's no way you want to try to talk to them because you're just too scared, too nervous.
Okay, so then you guys got together. You guys obviously had this athletic background. When you started having kids, was the intention to definitely put them into sport, or was it more use sport as a tool to help develop them as individuals?
I think it's a combination of both. I mean, I think, we both, she and I truly like sports. So, she grew up in a sports family. Her dad was drafted in the major leagues and played minor league baseball. He started the baseball league in our city, and he also was our football coach. So, when your kids are around you, you're always around sports. We're always either volunteering or going to a sporting event. They start to get interested. And then the other thing that we both knew was that it was an opportunity to get into college and have a great time in college, have some discipline and some challenges, and make you more well-rounded if you're able to participate in sports and get good academics. So, I think we kind of, we weren't sure what sports, but we knew that we wanted our kids to participate in sports. So we just kind of surrounded it with different ideas of sports and let them try different things early on.
So let's talk about Coco's journey. When did you first put a racket in her hand?
I was watching Australian Open. I'm not sure the year, but I think Coco was 3 or 4, and Serena won it that year. And I was, it comes on early in the morning, so it's a Saturday early morning match, and I was sitting there watching, and just like any little girl, they want to please dad, and she liked it. So I ran out to Target and bought her a racket and some skirts and a little sponge ball, and then she started hitting on the garage. So that's kind of when she started to kind of like tennis, but we didn't do much with it then, though. It was just that moment in time, and then we kind of revisited tennis again when she turned 6 years old. But during that time, she cheered, she did gymnastics, she did soccer, and she really loved gymnastics. But it was apparent to us that she was going to be too tall, and my wife, being a gymnast, said she's not going to be so graceful and so flexible to be able to be a gymnast. It's unusual for them to be 5'9" or 5'10", and that's what it projected out her height was going to be. But she was so disappointed that she couldn't be a gymnast.
I bet. And how do you tell a 5-year-old at that age, you know what, this might not be for you?
No, you're kind of one of the tallest ones in the group by far. It's going to be tough to be a gymnast at this height. So I think she still liked it, and ironically, she can still walk on her hands and do a lot of things she used to do when she was in gymnastics. But she understands it now that, I said the tallest gymnast that I ever knew was like 5'2".
Well, I tell you what, she's certainly taken that athleticism and given us all something very spectacular to watch. Now, at 6 years old, she's starting to hit the ball a bit more, get a little bit better. What's your thought process as far as making her play more, making her practice more? Oh, she's good. Do I ramp up the hours? What were you thinking around that time?
I kind of knew that people started when they were 4 or 5, and I'd see things saying they started early. But for me, I was like, what can you do with a 4 or 5-year-old? At this point, you can't do much. And so I didn't pay much attention to it. And I was in corporate America. My wife was teaching school, so we were, fairly busy, and I was traveling quite a bit. And you came down to Florida for the holidays, and we dropped her off at the Delray Tennis Center because I still knew that you had to start early. We dropped her off at the Delray Tennis Center. She was playing tennis, and the guy, we could drop her off at like 8 in the morning, and then we go for a walk on the beach and come back and get her. And the guy said, man, I'd like her to stay longer. She's pretty good. And I'm thinking totally like, there's the tennis hustle, man. They're trying to get me to spend more money, but I was okay with it because it kind of gave me more time with Candy, and we didn't necessarily have to, be with her for 5 or 6 hours, and she was loving every minute of it. And so once we did that for like 2 weeks, we were home for the holidays. We had to go back because we were on break, and the guy recommended that we go to a place in Atlanta, and they, she's talented, you should, pursue her further. And so we took him up on it. We took her to they just started Quick Start. So we're playing with the orange balls, and I would take her there on the weekends because it was too far from my house to do it during the week with the traffic in Atlanta. So I drive up there on the weekends. That was the primary one. I drop her off, and they had some little camp that they do there. It was mostly indoors. I drop her off, and this was doing, football season. So I drop her off, and I'd go watch football and come back and pick her up every week. And then eventually we ran into somebody who was an outshore electrician. He was a tennis professional, and he liked tennis. I said, why don't you try and coach my daughter? And he was a little reluctant because she was young, but then he eventually decided to. And he immediately said, man, she can concentrate for long periods of time. And he just made the game fun for her. So he'd come by twice a week, which stopped me from having to drive so far. And it was great because she fell in love with the sport because he made it so fun at that age.
How interesting. You hear so many parents who, end up pushing their kids, especially at that age. You have to do this, you have to do this. You kind of let her develop her own love for the game, and you just kind of kept supporting her as that grew.
Yeah, I think you can't go out there and try and play for your parents, or parents got to nudge them along. So I'm not going to say they don't need some direction. And I realize that now, like my middle son, my oldest son, he'll do what you ask, but you got to give him direction, and he'll go do it. Whereas Coco's the opposite. She's going to wake up and get herself ready to go play and wants to go play. And my little one's that way too. He's always asking to go play. So they're all very different. Though for her, we didn't really necessarily need to. I've never asked her to like go to practice, even though she didn't want to. It's always like, hey, look, she's like, Dad, I need to practice. Sometimes at this stage, I'm peeling back saying, can we maybe not go today and have a break?
Now, Corey, I got to ask, because this is, I think, one of the most impressive, courageous decisions that a parent can make. And it doesn't always pan out as spectacularly as it has for you guys. You were a healthcare executive,
Yeah.
and you were in that industry. And at one point, you made the decision to take a step away from that and really focus on Coco's tennis full time.
And we thought when she was, 10, she won like a national clay court championship. She's the youngest, actually. She's the youngest to do that.
Wow.
And she always would, practice hard and try hard, but you just don't know what the world looks like in terms of tennis when you're trying to be a tennis athlete. And it appeared to me that she was special, even amongst the supposed elite group of kids that were playing the sport at the time. And then we knew, very early that we had a really good athlete. So, whether it was tennis or basketball, we knew that she could do something very good with proper training and discipline and direction. So, I'm traveling around and my wife would always tell me when I get back from my trips, because I would literally be going 3 or 4 days out the week, and I'd spend time with her on the weekend playing tennis after the coaches had it all week. And when I would work with her, it was just to make observations, make sure she was progressing correctly. And then as she started to get older, we started kind of plan, and we wrote down a plan of action for her. And we weren't sure if we were going to stay in Atlanta or come to Florida. We were just trying to make what's the best environment to train, what's easiest for us as a family, and then get our finances in order so we can kind of afford to give her the best opportunity. Because we didn't want to make any regret. We didn't want to go back and say, man, if we only would have did this then, only that, we know. So I started planning this, and then right about when she turned 12, we knew that ITF was coming, and we were never ever going to allow her to travel with a coach without us. And it's tough for some people to make that choice, but it was always concerning to me what took place at tournaments. So the parent always had to go. And then as she was turning 12, 13, I was planning on leaving corporate America when she turned 13 to travel with her, and ended up leaving 6 months earlier than I planned. But it was a great time and everything worked out perfectly. And then we decided to do that. So it is a leap of faith, but we did a lot of planning to make sure that financially we were fine, and also that our other children would not be missing out on anything that they needed to have for their growth and development.
Now, you mentioned that at an age of 12, 13, even at that age, the financial commitment to try to really invest in a player, it's quite significant in this sport.
It is. I mean, you can spend as much as, people are willing to take as much money as you're willing to spend. Right. But me participating to help curb the cost. So that was some of the cost curve. I mean, it's kind of catch-22, right? I'm not making money, but I'm also not curbing some of my spend. But managing the process, and also taking the experience I had in corporate America, my athletic experience, my wife's, and trying to understand what are the things that are needed to develop along the way. And the most important thing as a parent, I would recommend to parents, is you have to put together the environment yourself. I mean, you can go to somebody's academy, but that's their environment. But you have to create your own kid's environment and their own academy. And that academy can exist within an academy. You can still get what you need out of the academy, but it has to be about the development of that kid. And you can't worry about this academy or this coach, because I would always tell coaches, look, I reserve the right to fire you at any time if I'm not happy.
You have always been pretty vocal about that, and I couldn't agree with you more, that regardless of how great the coach is or whoever you hire, you might have a team of 5 people with your daughter at some point, but it's the parents who really do need to stay engaged.
Yes, Yes, I mean, and you know, sometimes you have a lot of loyalty, but you can't be more loyal to anybody than the kid. Because at the end of the day, that's why you're doing it. That's why you partake in it, is make sure you're most loyal to them. And sometimes they don't know what they need. I mean, you know, even when we picked our last coach, I think Coco wanted to go with this particular guy for the reasons that I didn't think were good. So I picked the coach that, you know, she wasn't so sure about. So I made that decision for her. And, you know, right now it's been a great decision for her to do that. I've had her leave other, you know, hitting partners or somebody else that we didn't like for certain reasons. It's never personal. It's just not the right fit for my kid.
Of course. You always have to make the right decision. And now I want to just shift off court for a minute. When I listen to Coco, I have a smile on my face. You know, everyone I think in America and the world during Wimbledon last year, just listening to her interviews and everything, they lit up. You know, you still see that joy of being a kid. You've talked about it too, letting kids be kids while you're still trying to get them to excel. How difficult was it treading that line?
Well, I think one of the things I learned early on as a parent is that, you know, you got to turn it off sometimes, because when you're living with the coach, you know, Coco and I rarely talk about tennis when we're home, when we're off the court. I mean, so I think you have to make a decision to kind of separate the two to allow them to grow and develop it. Because at the end of the day, you're trying to, you know, raise a responsible young kid. And it can't, you know, you don't want them one-dimensional that all they can do is think about tennis. I mean, you see some of the older people that are out of tennis, all they can do is think about tennis, and they can't function in anything else. And so you don't want that for your kids. So you're trying to make sure that they're balanced and well-rounded and well-educated. They know how to articulate themselves if asked a question, and they know how to, you know, express themselves as well as also understand when they need to be guarded about what they express.
Right. You have 3 kids. When one ends up doing so well, it's not always easy for the others. Has that ever been a challenge? Has that something that's been come up with the boys?
I think we got good enough separation between the ages. So, you know, Coco's 16 and he's 12. He's playing a different sport. So far it's fine. And my oldest son, he's a big fan. So it's kind of interesting. He's a big fan, but he's good within his own right. So he's had success within the sports he's played. You know, he's always been one of the best football players. So a lot of times he's the best baseball player on the team. He's one of the best basketball. So he's had his own success. And I think that, you know, she kind of really serves as a role model for them in terms of competing and practicing and preparation for the sport. So actually it's kind of nice, because I can never ask them to do anything that she hasn't already done.
Love that. She's setting the model the right way. Now you can see when she's on the court, she's, you know, very independent out there. She's got great body language, always very positive. But what are your thoughts on on-court coaching? That's something that's been talked about a lot. There are lots of new things coming into the game. Is that something you're a fan of?
Yeah, I am a fan of it. I'm okay with it not happening at the Grand Slams, because that's a unique event. But I think, you know, really they should push it down to the junior level, and especially 12 and under, 14 and under, because I think, to me, that's when you really need to give the feedback, not only to train them to be good tennis players, but also train them to be good competitors. I mean, and a lot of time when they're juniors, you know, all you're going to tell them a lot of times is stop cheating, quit throwing your racket, quit whining, and all this stuff needs to be. I believe in, really, whether it's coaching or even teaching, at the moment that it happens, it's best to correct the behavior at the moment it happens, as opposed to waiting and seeing. Because, you know, what can happen sometimes, the kid can act like a jerk and then win the match, and the parents just forget all about the jerk part, because
Of course.
they had the outcome that they wanted. And really, it was important to coach them through to being a jerk part. And I think that would help, you know, the junior tennis, and probably help better players stay in the sport a little bit longer.
Yeah, the maturity that
better athletes stay in the sport longer.
No, absolutely. And the maturity that you talk about is something that's, you know, certainly held Coco in good stead, even in the early part of her career. And she's always seemed ahead of the trend. And I think we see that clearly, especially when we take a look at her trending UTR. You know, when you look at it from 2019 and 2020, her trending UTR has always been much higher than her ranking.
Sure.
So, you know, when we keep our eye on, you know, her sort of level of, right here, we take a good look at it. In 2019, she's ranked about 141, but her trending UTR was 12.47, or her ranking was 453 rather, but her trending UTR was 1247. So you can see just next year, she bumps that up even further, and her WTA ranking shoots all the way up to 52. So wow. I think we just keep an eye on her, and you keep a sneaky eye on this UTR, because I think it's only going to be moving in the right direction.
Yeah, take a look at the trends over time, and I think early on, I think when you first start going into the UTR arena, you may not have access to the better players because you only can play 12 and under tennis or ITF. So I think as you get access to better players, then you got a better chance to impact that, really to see where you are when you start to look at those numbers. Say, okay, this is what a 13 looks like. This is what a 15 looks like. And then it also helps us with the selection of picking hitting partners and what kind of hitter partners we want.
Right. Corey, I just want to ask you, we're going to go to some questions, because we've got a ton of questions that have come in for you from the audience and stuff. But just before we get to that, we've seen so much of the amazing accomplishments she's already had. Her run at Wimbledon, she followed it up with her first title at the end of last year in Linz. What do you see are the challenges that you guys are, sort of gearing up against over the next year, 2 years?
I think the tennis part becomes easier of trying to improve the player is, to me, become the easier part, when I thought that'd be the most difficult. But the setting up parameters, understanding what they need to work on and improve on, and setting that environment up on a daily, weekly basis is a little bit easier. The navigation of some of the things that are important part of the development of a pro becomes more challenging. Social media, press, attention, people asking a lot of your time, of her time, a lot of hype that's, you can't control what people write and say about you, but it certainly can have an impact on you, and trying to train your child to maybe stay focused on what's important to you and the values in your family. So I think, that's what becomes challenging. And then, we're trying to get the right schedule and make sure we're playing the right tournaments. And as you're coming up like she is, it changes literally every tournament. You have success here, your ranking moves. Now you got access to these tournaments when you maybe were forecasting that you're going to play these tournaments. But I think even since she started even playing like ITF juniors, I think we were always, even in the 12 and under, we're always very guarded about how much we play and how many tournaments we play, making sure that she's having more success than failures. And I know there's different philosophies on that, but I think my wife and I think we're of the mind that, winning is a habit. So you should put your kid or your athlete in a situation where they can have success more often than failure, because losing's a habit too. So, people that lose find ways to lose. People that win find ways to win.
Ain't that the truth? Absolutely. Corey, listen, we wish you complete success on this continued journey. It's been absolutely beautiful. So all those challenges you talk about, we have no doubt that she's going to be able to overcome them all really, really well. But I'm gonna open it up a little bit to the audience, because we've been getting a ton in our chat here, and we've got a ton before. So everyone out there, don't get mad at me. I'm going to try to get to a bunch of them, but we may not get to all of them. Okay, so Kathleen has sent up, how do you balance keeping tennis fun and trying to compete? She doesn't want tennis to become a job for his son.
It's tough, but I think, you got to communicate to the kid. What I try to do, and I took this from my corporate America, I try to allow their goals dictate their behavior. And so if, my daughter's early on, I want to be the greatest. Well, if you want to do that, you have to do these things.
Yep.
And we're constantly going back and revisiting the things that we agreed on to be able to do. You said you want to do this. Well, this is what's required to get to that next step. And then you find them using their words as opposed to your words as the parent coming out and saying, you need to do this. And I think keeping it fun, it's a matter of perspective of what they call fun. But I know for us, we're always trying to have different games. We're adjusting practices a lot to make sure that we're drawing the right behavior, but also keeping it interesting as well. So it's not easy though, because it's especially in a time like this when you're locked down for 7-8 weeks without a tournament. A lot of times you can sprinkle tournament play or doubles play into there to keep it fun, but also keep the behavior such that they're developing and learning new things and doing it, with serious intent.
And when we look at people like Roger Federer, Serena Williams, Venus, you see that it's their love for the game that keeps them winning after so many years. So that's absolutely brilliant. All right, this is a very interesting one now from Natalia. When did you bring in the team for Coco, whether it's people, other coaches, whoever it may be, and what's the process in which you choose these people?
Well, I think we started, bringing in different people from the onset, but I think as, from 11, 12 on, we started to look at a hitting partner and a private coach every day. We were blessed along the way. We ran into some great people along the way, but I think parents, your personality's got to fit the person that you're working with as well, because they can be great all day, but if you don't like them or can't get along with them, it's just not going to work. So you got to understand what your personality is and what your expectation is as a parent, and understand your kid's personality and try to find that right fit. And there's going to be a balance between keeping it fun and interesting, but also keeping it disciplined to make sure they're having the outcome that you want on a daily basis. So I think you got to, gauge that. But I say certainly, 11, 12, 13, you got to start looking around at who's the right fit to train with and spar with and those things like that. And keep in mind, they didn't have UTR when I first started out, so this makes it a lot easier.
It certainly does. Absolutely. Now, Coco obviously is one of those players who, even at a young age, her game was set to be a champion in the big stage. So you see a lot of other players who, are just sort of geared to win at that age group. It's not a development for the long term. So in that aspect, Rich is sending in a question. What advice would you give to parents to focus on the long term and not the short term results for the 10s, 12s?
Yeah, it's tough because I think at that young age, you want to see the characteristics of a person that's going to be a champion, that's going to win early on. And I think, when you're developing them at a young age, for me was make sure they're playing the right way. And playing the right way, is aggressive all-court tennis. The challenge is that sometimes you can't win playing that way. You can certainly hit moon balls in the 10s and 12s and win a lot of matches and actually win a lot of championships, but then you get to the next level and that doesn't become a problem for your opponent. So I think you're trying to gauge between playing the right way and having success at that age group, but keep emphasizing. So even if they won something not playing the right way, don't over celebrate. Well, you won, at least you won, but that's not how, you want to win. So you got to reinforce that behavior with the kid to play the way you think they need to play. But, eventually it's going to be some of their choice too, but because they'll end up playing the way they like to play. But if, again, like I said earlier, use their words as to how they like to play.
Certainly. Now, I'm going to go with a few more of these sent in questions from our audience, but if everyone wants to send in questions as we speak here, I'll try to get to a couple of those before I let Corey get out of here. Magnus is sending in a question that says, is there anything you would have done differently if you could go back time and restart her tennis journey?
I don't know. I think that we've been fortunate to make some good choices. From a technical standpoint, I think that, little things that we didn't pay attention to, like I found myself when she's 14, 15, reminding her to split step. And that could have been emphasized a lot more at a younger age. I just didn't, because I figured you'd pick it up naturally doing that. I think that understanding how to play doubles at a younger age probably could have helped develop skills and volley skills a little earlier. But, she ended up becoming a pretty good doubles player. But I think that possibly we could have done that along the way. I think that, maybe we would have looked at moving to Florida maybe a little bit later, and we didn't have to come as early as we did, which would have helped, make her more well-rounded at an earlier age. But, we didn't know that we were doing what we thought was the right thing to do at the moment. I'd say parents, you're going to make, good and bad decisions along the way. Just don't wait too long to change them if you think it's not the right decision, because there's no one way to do this.
Corey, when I ask you these questions and you're talking about raising a superstar, you say it all seems very logical and very common sense, and it's, just very sensible. You make it sound easy, my man. It's a pleasure to listen. It's a privilege, I'm sure, for everyone out there who's listening and who has kids who play the sport. Sure.
Well, yeah, like I said, I think it's one of those things that our athletic background helped us to be logical about the development process. So parents, not that you had to play sports to do it, but there's a step process to a development path for anything you do, whether you're teaching English, math, sports, and you have to understand those steps. And there's a lot of information out there to be able to do that, to gauge where your kid is and where you think they should be and how they scope up against the rest of the field. And like I said, I know this is UTR, but you really can look and say, my kid's 12, how are the other 12-year-olds doing around here? Their UTR is this. And now you start to look backwards and say, you know what, let me do a different plan. And I think one thing I like to tell parents when they first start, it does cost a little bit of money. You got to figure out how to curb that cost as much as you can, but trust your eyes. And remember, if you don't have a plan, then what are you executing against? You got to execute against something. So you have to have a plan, and you write down a plan, and you can have other coaches and other parents or do seminars like this to say, where am I at with my plan, and be willing to make adjustments, because we certainly made adjustments along the way. I mean, I remember when she was getting ready to play ITF, I remember sitting with Maratigu, and he said, look, there's all these tournaments. You can go to Egypt and play, and you can go these places and play and get your ranking up pretty quick. And that wasn't going to work for our family. So I said, no, we can't play all those tournaments. We're going to have to catch them at Orange Bowl, because that's around the corner. And if you can't beat them there, it doesn't make sense to go to these other countries, because we got a pretty good indication of where we're at right now.
Have a plan and need to adjust and be able to execute. I hope everybody is writing this down. All right, firing in from Alan. A little bit of an off-the-court question. When Coco schedules her academic studies during her tennis, how busy is her schedule?
We've always got a busy schedule. What we try to do, and we're not always successful, what we try to do is on the road, as we know that we have a tournament, especially if we got a Grand Slam or a one-week tournament, we try to get a lot of work done before we leave for the tournament, because we know it's tough to concentrate. It's just like any athlete when you play tennis. You got a big meet or you got a big competition, it's hard to get the studying done when you're right there in the tournament in the midst of things, so you get some things done. So we really try to plan it ahead of time. And then I think when she turned pro, what my wife decided to do is adjust the homeschooling, so that we were heavy around times that we know we weren't going to be gone for a month. So if we knew we were going to be home, like this Indian Wells, Miami, we knew we were going to be in the United States, we were going to have a problem with internet or access to teachers. So we really tried to ramp up the amount of time that we put in academics.
Smart. All right, now we're going live here. So if everyone wants to send in their questions, I'm reading them. Whatever comes and grabs me quick, that's what Corey is going to answer. Okay, let's go with, very interesting. What does, from Petru Kodeman, hope I didn't butcher your name, much apologies if I did. Corey, if you had to pick a quality to be able to turn pro, what would that quality be?
To me, you got to be, I'd say it's a hybrid. You got to be driven, you got to be competitive. And if you're competitive and if you love competing, then you're going to find your way that you're going to do the work that's required so you can compete and be successful. You got to want it more than anything.
Got to want it more than anything. Competitive. I think we see that in all the champions. Christina Fagan, as a junior, when did you sort of identify that, you know what, she's definitely not going to college, she's going pro?
I think right when she made the run at 13 to the finals of the U.S. Open Juniors. Okay. She just made a tremendous jump. So we were coming onto the ITF tour, the competition level stepped up. And it wasn't so good at first. I mean, she was losing first round and second round. It wasn't having any success. But I think once you get used to the ball speed and a different level of style, you'll see if your player quickly adapts. But you got to do a lot of work to really get them to adapt. And once she adapted, there was apparent to me that her rate of improvement was so fast once she saw competition that she probably would be able to pass up her collegiate career. I mean, it was, my wife and I understood it, but we both enjoyed college. So it was tough. Right. to come to that realization, but now I think we're starting to see players start to develop on tour that come through college, and some of them may need that. But for her, I think that she grew physically, she was physically strong and really mentally tough. So I thought that maybe we'll test the waters, but we still have a lot of time. I mean, we've ultimately turned pro, but we still had a lot of time. We were making these decisions at 13, 14, 15.
Now, this isn't a question, but I just had to read it because it's absolutely brilliant. Now, Ross Dallimpipel has sent in, if you were my dad, I would totally listen to you. Your corporate training and sales must have been out of this roof because you're the best. That was just worth reading, Corey, so I just had to give that.
I don't know about that, but I will say I worked for Abbott Laboratories, and their training was amazing. I will say that company had amazing training, because I had no work experience and they turned me into an executive.
Okay, I'm gonna give Sarah Venkat the last question here. The last question from Sarah Venkat coming in is, how long does Coco practice each day, and maybe a couple of the drills that she does?
Sure. So we usually go in the morning from about 90 minutes in the morning and maybe an hour in the afternoon, and we do that 3 days a week, and then and then 3 days we do 1 hour, an hour and a half. So we do 2 days, 3 times a week right now. And then 3 days we just go once. And she loves fitness, so she does fitness 6 days a week. That's more her choice, but she loves fitness. That's one of the things she's, if she wasn't playing tennis, she'd probably be running track or something like that. So she really enjoys that. Our drills start to adjust depending on what we saw at a tournament. So right now, and this goes to even your player now, hitting the ball deep is important. So every drill that we do is centered around ball depth and ball height, making sure we get the ball deep into the court and trying to build that into a habit. And every drill we do or a game, we do a lot of games where we're always hitting targets and we time the target. So we do a lot of that to make sure we get the ball depth that we want, because at least for our player, we know that she can cover the court very well. So even when she's put on defense, if she can get the ball deep in the court, then she can instantly turn it back into offense. So we do that every day. But I think when you're on the pro tour, you're working on all aspects of your game all the time, because you got a lot of data there that tells you what you need to really work on. So, but she's still a developing player, as is still junior in terms of age. So there's everything that she needs to work on. We're working on slice and volleys and our serve placement, serve speed, return. So we do all of the things. We touch all parts of her game every week. And we really, every 2 days, we probably touch every single thing in our game.
Absolutely brilliant. As you know, she's headed in the right direction. Now, that's it for the Q&A period, but I'm going to leave you with one last question that I've been thinking about for these last 30 minutes. Now, my man, Corey, I hate to put you on blast here, but can I ask you, what is your UTR and what are your plans on how to improve it?
I've been begging you guys to give me this false UTR so I can and if you give me a really high UTR, because at this stage, I can't play tennis at all right now. I play more basketball right now. But I'm always begging you guys, like, give me like a 15 UTR so I can line and scare them to death. But no, I never had the benefit of developing a UTR. Back when I played, I was a serving volleyer. So
my kind of guy.
Yeah, serving volleyer and one-hand backhand, because back when I played, guys had to have one-hand backhand. So it was cool to have the one-hand backhand.
Oh, man. I love it. Okay, well, listen, we'll work out getting you that UTR, and then next time I see you at an event, you got to promise me that, you and I can hit some balls.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, and I hope this was helpful for everybody that was listening.
It was brilliant, Corey. Thank you so much for taking the time. Everyone out there, just a quick reminder that tomorrow we'll also have Vasek Pospisil on here, who's had a terrific career on our UTR Powered by Oracle All Access series. And just another reminder, head over to myutr.com to be able to learn more about how we can bring free technology to your tennis world, your community, high school, club, and academy. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. Corey was absolutely fantastic. Have a terrific rest of the day and the evening, wherever you might be in the world, and we will see you tomorrow.
Thank you, man.
Thank you, Corey.